Mr. Albright, thank you so much for your time and being with us today. Let's start with a very general question. You have dedicated over 3 decades of your life to analyzing hidden nuclear program in different countries in the world. What is your assess currently on the Iran nuclear facilities after a strike by United States and Israel?
Oh, I think the Iranian nuclear program has been seriously damaged. And for many of the programs, probably not, they can't recover. You know, the gas centrifuge enrichment program that Iran spent decades building. It started in the 1980s and grew to quite a large size. I think that's finished, and they won't be able to build that back for many, many years, if ever, because often they depended on buying things overseas. Many things they can't make for the gas centrifuge program, and they probably won't be able to buy them again. And so I think this idea of a large-scale enrichment program is really something that has been seriously damaged and may not be replaceable.
Do we have a timeline for that? Because there are different and very wide range of estimation. Pentagon says 2 months to 2 years setback for Iranian nuclear program, and President Trump mentioned about over decades. Can you specifically give us a time how long it would take for Iranian regime to recover their nuclear program if they want to do so?
Well, one is you have to be careful what you're describing. Not everything. Not everything was destroyed in the gas centrifuge program, and we don't know how much, but there's stocks of 60% enriched uranium, or maybe stocks of 20%, and that in a sense there's a lot of enrichment effort invested in those stocks, and therefore if you had just as few as 1,000 or 2,000 centrifuges, if you could put together a small centrifuge plant, you could make a limited amount of weapon-grade uranium. And so I would say they have some remnants, dangerous remnants of the enrichment program, but essentially that enrichment program is essentially destroyed. But there's another part of the program which has to be considered, and that's the part that would take the weapon-grade uranium and fit it into a nuclear weapon. And there's a whole nother complex of facilities that are dedicated to making the nuclear weapon itself. And the program wasn't fully functional at the time of the bombing, but it was pretty sophisticated. And Israel also destroyed much of that. And so if you combine the two, getting the enriched uranium and making the weapon, that's what leads to these estimates that the Iranian regime is pretty far from being able to build a nuclear weapon. I mean, you could somehow speculate on it, could put together a small enrichment plant and make weapon-grade uranium, but that's not enough. They have to be able to turn it into a nuclear weapon, and that could take significantly longer. And then there's other factors at play too. Israel did something that incredibly unprecedented. I mean, people say you can't destroy the knowledge. Well, on the nuclear weaponization, Israel pretty much accomplished that, and by what it did, and it's unprecedented. What they did is they killed a certain number of Iranian nuclear scientists, managers, experts, decades of experience. People had been in the ex-nuclear weapons program of the early 2000s. Let's see, in a little list of an official list put out by Israel, 9 out of the 11 people had been in the old nuclear weapons program. But more importantly, they were also managers. And then there's others that are reported to have been killed, but also their family members were killed. And then at the same time, during the war, its agents were contacting many other scientists and threatening their lives. It also made a statement that if you work in the nuclear weapons program, we'll kill you. And then it also sent out a sort of a social media message. If you have information about secret activities or important information, come to us. And they even gave an email address. and said use an external VPN, but Israel a couple of days ago issued a statement saying, essentially they had so many people coming forth to them, they said, wait, we haven't forgotten you, we will get to you in the end. So there's a waiting list in order to turn in information. And so if Iran regime moves to make nuclear weapons, it has to deal with these terrified scientists who have to think, okay, if I work on this, not only I can die, but so can my wife and children. And my neighbor, my colleague next to me may go to the Mossad and reveal the program. And so you have a situation where, yes, you can't destroy knowledge, but you can certainly take out the ability and knowledge of people who ran the programs in the nuclear weaponization side. You can inhibit others from joining, and you can put in seeds of doubt and concern in others that they want to reveal those secret programs. So I think overall, what you have to think about is that this program has been traumatized, its facility severely damaged, and it's going to be very hesitant to do anything for quite a while. I mean, it's very hard to put years on it, but it's going to be quite a while.
Specifically, if we want to talk about Fordo facilities, in last few days, on daily basis, some satellite photo published by Maxar company. What is your understanding from those photos? Do you see the Iranians are trying to extract all those enriched uranium from the Fordo, or how can you read all those movements around Fordo now?
Yeah, and we've been looking at satellites from Maxar and other companies ever since the war started, and see the images on Fordo. And what you can see is there was an area where these bunker busters went in. There's 6 in each area near the ridge line of the enrichment plant, and the workers were kind of stabilizing the area, putting down covers. Periodically, they take off the covers, and we think they're evaluating, trying to figure out a way to evaluate the damage. We've seen images where they were trying to dig back into a tunnel, had cleared part of it, and again, it's probably damage assessment at this time. I would expect that with 5 bunker busters going down each ventilation shaft, the tremendous damage has been done to the plant. And it would be very hard just to open up the tunnels and walk in. But I think the Iranians do want to know what damage took place. And so we think they're taking measurements, trying to figure out ways to do damage assessments. But I doubt very much the facility will operate again. I think there are questions, is there enriched uranium in there? President Trump's talked about it being in there. Can it be recovered? I mean, those are questions that the Iranians, I think, will eventually try to figure out. And then Israel and the United States will probably try to stop them.
How about specifically about Natanz? What we know about Natanz? Because not using bunker buster bomber on Natanz made some assumption that probably still in Natanz the scale of damage is less than Fordo. Can we say this way or no?
Israel first attacked Natanz and took out the electrical supply. There was a pilot enrichment plant. It was actually making 60% enriched uranium at the pilot plant, and they destroyed that. They had 3. I think we saw holes, and they're holes, they're not craters, for 3 earth penetrators into the Natanz site. So I think the assessment after the Israeli strike is that most of the centrifuges are either destroyed or not operational, because centrifuges are delicate instruments, and if they, for example, if they lose electricity, as they slow down, they can break. It's a very rapidly spinning rotor inside a metal casing, and it can become unstable as it spins down and smash into the wall and break. And so, but we heard that Israel wasn't sure how much of Natanz had been damaged inside, And so I think the United States attacked with 2 bunker busters in the hull that had all the centrifuges in order to cause even much greater damage and have greater assurance that essentially the building, the program inside Natanz was destroyed. And it's important, it had 17,000 gas centrifuges that were in that single hall.
Single hall in Natanz.
In Natanz, so in the underground facility, yeah.
IAEA report last year actually indicated that Iran intended to install more than 6,000 centrifuge in Fordo or Natanz or overall. Do we know what happened to all those centrifuges? Are they already installed and destroyed, or they are kind of ambiguous information regarding to those?
Well, all that the IAEA has been able to report for several years is how many actually get installed. And so there were 17,000 installed at Natanz. There were about 2,700 installed at Fordow, 700 at the pilot plant at Natanz. And in the last year, about 7,000 had been installed. So Iran had really ramped up its ability to make centrifuges and then to install them. And so there is a question of how many were made but not installed. The international inspectors used to know that number, but Iran stopped allowing the inspectors to monitor that several years ago, and they just don't know. So there's a question of how many centrifuges are well, somewhere, and may not have been bombed. But Israel struck the 3 centrifuge manufacturing sites that Iran had, and those were the ones that Iran had to declare as part of its agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency and under this nuclear agreement, JCPOA. And so there was a pretty good confidence that there aren't other ones. And so Iran doesn't appear to be able to make any more centrifuges. And that's part of why the assessment is that it's essentially a destroyed program. And it's even worse. You put uranium into the centrifuge to enrich it. Natanz starts with natural uranium in a chemical form called uranium hexafluoride. And you have to make the uranium hexafluoride, and it's made at Esfahan. And the facility to make that was pretty much completely destroyed. So Iran can't make centrifuges anymore, and it can't make this, we call it the feed gas, the natural uranium hexafluoride that's needed to enrich. And it's a stepwise process. So Natanz was the workhorse, and that's why it had 17,000 centrifuges. And then the pilot plant with just 700 was starting to make 20 and 60%, and then Fordow was making 20 and 60%. So you can do it in many fewer centrifuges, but without Natanz, you really don't have much of a centrifuge program in the kind of program that had been there.
Based on recent report by Axios, any kind of movement in Fordo facilities that could be read as an attempt by Iranian government for extracting all uranium from Fordo could resume the war and could resume the more strike on Fordo. My question is how the intelligence community here in Washington or Israel, how they can read how this kind of movement could be indicated for this intelligence community just from satellite photo, because there is no more direct access to all those facilities?
Well, it's hard, and you have to assume the worst. We don't know what kind of information Israel's collecting through its, let me just call it, informant program. And they obviously want people coming out of Iran that have knowledge about the enrichment program that remains and about the program to make the nuclear weapon itself. If you're only reliant on satellites, then what you're looking for is movement around the tunnel entrances and trucks and cars and just activity. And if you don't have an informant telling you what's actually going on, then that kind of activity around the tunnel entrance very likely would lead to additional bombing to close up that tunnel entrance. So I think you really I have no idea what Israel and the United States knows, and if it's left to just use satellite imagery, then Iran's activity around these tunnel entrances will be the deciding factor. And what's interesting, Esfahan has a tunnel complex, a pretty deeply buried facility that was not destroyed. But its tunnel entrances were blocked, and when we've looked at satellite imagery at those tunnel entrances, there's been no attempt to open them. And in fact, Esfahan looks like a ghost town. And so does Natanz, looks like a ghost town. There's just no one there. But there is activity at Fordow. And
the current activity you mentioned.
Current activity. And so the people are watching carefully. And I would imagine if there's any indication that they're going into the tunnel entrances, that there could be additional bombing.
Just getting back to negotiation table, you have been covering closely all the recent negotiation between U.S. and Iran. Given the recent statement by Iranian government, do you still could see a genuine room for continuing the negotiation after this strike between two countries?
Well, I think the U.S. position is clear. Iran has to end enrichment. And I would add has to do it in a verified manner, because we have to know, do they have stocks of enriched uranium under their control? Do they have, how many centrifuges do they have that are not in Natanz or Fordow? And so you have to do that through verification arrangements. It can be done through the International Atomic Energy Agency investigating the situation, but that's really the condition. And I think from a U.S. point of view, Iran lost the war. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say in a way, but they lost the war, and they have a choice to make. That do they accept these conditions of a ceasefire, or do they risk the war starting again? And so far the indications are they're going to resist. And they're even trying to create a movement for what they've called jihadi scientists. You know, scientists are willing to sacrifice themselves and their family for the glory of an enrichment program. You know, it's kind of an absurd notion, actually. And so it looks like they're going to resist. And I live in Germany much of the year, so it's not a great analogy in the Iranian case, but it is relevant. Is Hitler decided not to surrender, and he even said that if Germany can't win the war, the Germans deserve to die, and hundreds of thousands did as a result of that decision. And so we'll see if Israel and the United States are willing to push further against the regime, but Israel's not going to accept that regime that hates Israel, is determined to destroy it, get nuclear weapons.
What is your prediction on the next move by Iranian government? Do you think would they get back fully on negotiation table, or are they going to just keep going some activities for resuming war? Do you see the chance of war to just get back again?
Well, I would guess that the Iranian regime will want to negotiate, but they're not going to want to end enrichment, and so they'll be trying to stall for time. I don't think they're going to do very much in terms of reconstituting their program. I mean, what you have to worry about is they're going to just hide their assets, hide any enriched uranium they have, hide any centrifuges, and they won't do it at Fordow and Natanz. They'll probably maybe an above ground building somewhere, but do very little. Because they know that they've got informants everywhere, or potential informants. They've got scared personnel in their programs that are worried about their lives. And so I think they'll do very little, if anything, for quite a while, and see if they can outlast the interest of Israel and the United States. So I think part of the challenge now is that the United States, and particularly President Trump, needs to be emphatic that this is a ceasefire arrangement. It's not an arms control negotiation like involving the nuclear deal of 2015, 2016. It's a ceasefire arrangement, and the Iranian regime has to accept there will not be any more enrichment. But we'll see if Trump will do that.
That's a general, actually more general question. Based on NPT, Iran is allowed to enrich to 4% on uranium facilities. How do you see the zero enrichment policy by President Trump and Israel in the framework of IAEA?
Most countries have zero enrichment. Very few actually enrich. So, and the NPT is an agreement that allows allows is an odd word to use for an international treaty, but it's an agreement countries enter into that say we will pursue peaceful nuclear energy, we will allow inspections and show that it's a peaceful program, and that's the end of it. Iran has not shown it's a peaceful program, and they just were found in violation of their commitments under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So in that sense, they're a cheater, and different standards apply to countries that are in kind of gross violation of the international agreement. And that being said, the United States is fine. You want to claim you have a right to enrich, feel free, just don't do it. And as most countries in the world.
There are some concern that Iran may withdraw from NPT, and the question would be how that would be challenge for NPT organization, and how that could be unable to preventing Iran nuclear program in a longer term.
Well, I think a country can't withdraw from a treaty when it's in violation of it. I mean, that's international law. So Iran could go through the motions, but it wouldn't be recognized under international law that they've actually withdrawn. They'd still be held to this commitment of no nuclear weapons. And so but that being said, they may do it anyway, and they may not allow the IAEA back in. And what that means, though, in the end, is tremendous suffering for the Iranian people, and a regime seeking something that in many ways is only going to worsen their security situation. I mean, it's really, if you have a powerful country like Israel that feels that the Iranian regime wants to destroy it and regularly says, created all this sort of ring of fire around Israel, wanted to set up an invasion like what Hamas did. I guess what I understand, what the Israelis learned, that Hamas went too early. They, in a sense, we'd say in English, jumped the gun, that they wanted to have Hezbollah and Hamas invaded. And so Israel is never going to let Iran get nuclear weapons, and the United States will be there to support that. It may fluctuate in terms, do they want Israel, allow Israel, or give permission, I don't know what the term is. Let me just say, give a green light for Israel to attack Iran or not. That can change even by President Trump. But the Iranian regime is bringing down more sanctions on the people, greater risk of war, and in the end, the world isn't fair. I mean, just to say that out front. If Iran does move to get nuclear weapons, and Israel feels that it's done in a facility that can't be taken out by U.S. bunker busters, we know Israel doesn't admit this, but we know they have nuclear weapons of all types, and you could use a nuclear weapon to destroy any mountain complex in Iran. So in that sense, Iran can't win this game. I mean, it's really it's escalating, becoming more fanatical, at least in I guess more nationalistic post-attack. But it's a path that they can't win, and in the end, if a nuclear weapon is not going to in any way strengthen their security, it's going to worsen it dramatically and cause a lot of suffering.
Given your experience with other negotiation on nuclear program with other countries. How do you see the shape of diplomacy evolving under recent attack to Iran? Do you think that could be kind of normalizing preemptive strike on the nuclear facilities, as a part of, as a tools or as a part of negotiation table with in all other nuclear negotiation with other countries?
It's not the first time. I mean, there's a couple examples that are relevant. One is to think of the 1991 ceasefire arrangement with Saddam Hussein, where he was defeated and thrown out of Kuwait and had to accept a ceasefire that required him to abandon all weapons of mass destruction in a verifiable manner. And then you have a situation, let's say in Taiwan, U.S. moved very aggressively to end their nuclear weapons program. It was done secretly, but it involved a real denuclearization of the country. And that was done to preempt them from being able to build nuclear weapons, which they were approaching the ability to do. So I think preemption is done before. And ceasefire deals leading to things like ending enrichment have been done before. And so I think the Iran case, what's different is the new determination in the case of Israel that recognizes that Iran is very vulnerable. And if they move to build nuclear weapons, they will be attacked.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Albright, for your time and for this timely interview with us.
Okay, thank you.